So I want to continue speaking in Romans today. I thought we had such a great party last week here in this place, a great time. I wanted to continue in Romans chapter 12 and finish that up with you this morning and talk about ultimate impact and what does that look like in our lives. How many of you do not enjoy receiving a gift? I don't see why I'm not seeing any hands raised. We all like gifts, right? My son said we celebrated his 17 years with us yesterday as our family in the evening. There's just something special about getting together to honor, to gift, and presents to him, to say, I love you. You are so special to us, and you are Micah. And I just thank you for your prayers for over his health. He's been doing so much better, and he's on a good track right now with the medical care. Just thank you so much. And Micah, just let you know that that you are loved and how much I appreciate having you as my son. So, and great to have you here today. So he gives me a thumbs up. And that's his cue to stop talking about him. Okay. So there are 2 days a year that most people look forward to with great excitement and anticipation and the getting of gifts. And I believe that would be Christmas and birthday. Why do we enjoy those days so much, do you think, especially as kids? Probably the anticipation of getting those presents. Somebody noted last night, even at our party, that they notice as the kids get older, the gifts get smaller, but they get more expensive. And that seemed to be very true. But I think it's not just the gifts, I think it's the attention that is received on those special days. We get those gifts from family and friends, as I mentioned, to say, we love you, you are special to us, we think you are important, and yes, we want to be around you. There's nothing more special than that. I can remember the days when I was a wee little lad, and the days leading up to Christmas Eve, and my birthday on December 31st. I remember sometime in November that we would get Sears and Penny's catalogs in the mail. Does anybody know what those are? And my parents would go, okay, circle what you want. And I love that. So it was so much fun. I was talking about that with Carlene the other day, just those little spontaneous moments. Oh, remember that? Remember this? And about a week before Christmas, the days leading up to that big day, the big reveal of Christmas Eve, my parents would shutter themselves into their room and begin to wrap gifts. And to me, it seemed like it'd take hours and hours and hours. Now, keep in mind, there were 7 of us. So that was a lot of gifts. And we were blessed to have presents. And they would finally start bringing out these armful of gifts. And we were so excited and put them under the tree. In time, though, my parents would wonder how we were able to guess what the gifts were before we opened them. And perhaps it's because we knew where to look. And they would hide them under their bed, hide. So, eventually, as they learned of our ways, they began to code the gifts. So that way we weren't able to guess what they were anymore. Very smart, wouldn't you say? I wish I would have kept some of those amazing, terrific toys that I have. I wish I would have kept more. One of the things I do have is a little Weebles Wobble truck. Isn't that cute? Yes. I just don't have the Weebles anymore. Well, there's another special day if you're a believer in our lives, and that is the day that you accepted the Lord Jesus into your heart. That's a special birthday. Do you celebrate that day? Do you remember the day and hour when Jesus became your Savior? Well, happy birthday to you. What were some of the gifts you received that day? I'm probably thinking of some right now. Oh, what did I receive that day? about forgiveness of sins. That's a great gift that nobody else could offer. About eternal life. Eternal life. About God as your Father. What an amazing gift. Jesus as your Savior. Holy Spirit as your Comforter. Amazing gifts. Not many of us realize, though, that God also gave us some other gifts. And maybe that you haven't unwrapped those yet. We'll talk about those in a bit. These gifts are born in the Spirit and can be defined as a supernatural enablement or ability given by God that equips the recipient to perform a function, assignment, or duty to strengthen the church. These gifts could be labeled as your talents. What are your talents? What are your strengths? What are your abilities? What are you good at? What are you wired for? Even this morning, we have several people that have already stepped in their talents. There's people downstairs out in the annex teaching our kids. We're so thankful for them. We have a terrific worship team that up here this morning and last week. People were able to swap around and come up and be able to use their gifts. We have ushers and our hospitality team in the back. Terrific men's and women's group, just to name a few. Was it not God that made Eric Little run so fast? If you don't know his name or not familiar with him, he won the Scottish Olympic gold medalist in 1924 for the 400 meters, although that was not his favored event. Although he was able to keep that 400 meters race, hold that record for 12 years, his favorite event for that year was the 100 meters. But what happened is they scheduled that event to occur on a Sunday. And to him, that was the Lord's Day. And that he would not partake in that event. So he surrendered that for the Lord. He was nicknamed the Flying Scotsman after the record-breaking locomotive with the same name. And his decision then, many of us are aware that he became a missionary and carried the ultimate impact to people in other countries. And he found, as for everyone, a gift in giving of oneself to the purposes and plans of the kingdom of God. This morning we're going to look mainly at Romans 12, 3 through 8. Here we will find the proper attitude for exercising our gifts. It will also share a list of what are considered motivational gifts. If you take the time to examine these more, you might see a gift or two that you say, that's one of my strengths right there. And maybe there is a gift there that you haven't utilized yet. So let's take a look at those. First, we're going to do a little recap from last week. So number one, we want to evaluate our priorities. Let's take a look at Romans 12, 1 through 2. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Now, we all want our lives to count for something, don't we? We feel that we're here for a reason. Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 3:1, God has set eternity in the heart. God has created this space in every man that only God himself could fit into. Before we come to Christ, as some of our testimony is, we tried to fill that space with other things in life. We tried to be conformed to the image of the world because the world says, hey, this is good, let's try this. And they try to fill that spot in their heart, but yet they're not satisfied. They want something more, maybe something different. It's interesting to note Ecclesiastes is accredited to King Solomon. And he wrote this book later in his life. It is often referred to as the Book of Regrets. And it is Solomon reflecting on his life. And he says that power and prestige, nothing can fill that God-shaped void except God himself. That's what he's saying. So in view of God's mercies, what are some of those mercies he gave us? Romans 8:29, he chose us. He chose us. Before the foundations of the earth, God knew of our sinful state and determined to send a cure for our illness, and that is his son Jesus Christ, that he sent to the cross that you and I might have eternal life. Romans 8:15, he adopted us. God adopted us. We have two of my sisters are adopted. Anybody else adopted in here? Yep. What a special treat to invite somebody into your family, really a complete stranger, and treat them as your own child. What comes with that is feelings of love and affection, and it builds our confidence, doesn't it? And God applies that to us as he adopts us. We have that relationship to him, although by nature we're complete strangers to him. But he chose to adopt us. He also redeemed us. This is one of God's mercies. He redeemed us, Romans 5:10. Through the cross, we were brought to God. Through the cross, our load of guilt removed. And through the cross, we are conformed now to the image of Christ. At least that's what I'm trying to get to every day of my life. Also, one of his mercies is that he sealed us. He sealed us. Romans 5:5, love pours out on us through his ever-present Spirit, and the hope that you and I carry is not in vain. There is a purpose and a hope that we have, a hope that gets us up each day. This is in view of his mercies. Now, in current culture, there's a lot of pressure, external pressure, that want to bend and cram us into certain molds. I say bend and cram, but actually Satan just has a way really not to force us into these molds, but to entice us into these molds. And he does good at that. And if we're not careful, these enticements may lead us to comparison, and we don't want that. Comparison, it can be dangerous. It can erode the hope that God has placed in our hearts. Consider the questions that can pull on us. For example, what pulls on a lot of our young adults as well. What will people say if I do this? What will people think if I do that? How will people respond to these things I'm doing? Consider and evaluate your priorities. Evaluate your schedule. You ever thought about that? What you're doing for the week? Ask yourself, is this activity on my calendar pleasing to my Maker? Evaluate your credit card charges. Is this charge good stewardship of this money that God has given to me? Evaluate your conversation. Does the dialogue accomplish his will that you're involved in at that time? Evaluate your thought life. Is this thought pattern honoring to the mercies that God has shown to me, that he has freely given to me? Let's move on to Romans 3. And my second point is realistically evaluate your gifts. Let's take a look there. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the measure of faith that God has given you. This word grace in the Greek is charis. Everybody say charis. And it means favor and kindness. Aren't you glad for that? God has given this freely to us. It represents God leaning in towards us. God extending his benefits of himself to us by leaning in. It is his grace. Think more highly of yourself. Another word here is to be high-minded. High-minded. We don't know anybody like that, do we? We don't know anybody that's high-minded. High-minded means lacking humility and a true sense of what is real. Isn't that good? I like that. Lacking a true sense of what reality is. That is being high-minded. Reality says, though, that God loves you. He chose you. He adopted you. You are redeemed because of the cross. That is the true reality that we want to live in. Let's not be high-minded. Sober judgment means to be sober-minded, exercising self-control, to have an outlook that's really balanced and reflects moderation. Knowing that we're not all good at everything. We're not all good at everything, but we're good at some things. So let's find those and do good at them. Don't think of yourself higher than you are. We all need a realistic approach to life. A realistic approach to life. Let's be patterned after the purposes of God and conform to his image. Now, Paul says, evaluate our gifts. This comes on the heels of the great challenge that he said when he spoke as offering ourselves as a living sacrifice to the Lord and pursue the transformed life. Pursue the transformed life that he has planned for us. Lives that are really new, different, and they don't look the same as the old days. We can do this in confidence. This is when self gives away to God above all else and pride gives away to humility. So we are to think of ourselves soberly and sensibly, rationally, realistically, with balance and clear-headedness. That wasn't always easy for me as a teenager. I shared a story in the past once that I was caught. And we were 5 kids, my mom and dad, then 7. But each day of the week, we'd all take turns making lunches for all the kids. And one time, my mom had a lock on a drawer in the kitchen. That's where she kept all the treats. That was my favorite part of lunch, was all those treats. At the school, they might have chocolate pudding or something, but my mom had Suzy Q's and Ding Dongs and yum stuff like that. So she would buy those for the week, and she would not unlock that drawer until it was time for lunches to be made. And eventually, she trusted us enough not to stand there and supervise. Well, that was a mistake, according to my higher than thou thinking. And I took a couple pieces of treats, stuck them in my pocket, and went on my way, finished up the lunches, and I had to go through the front room to get to my bedroom. And now on my way through the front room, something happened. I bent over to pick it up, and the treats fell out in front of everybody. Yes, yeah, I know. Humility. Humble pie. Not always easy to deal with, and my parents aren't here today. I think they'll be here next Sunday visiting. I don't know what happened after that, but yeah, that was quite interesting. Usually, embarrassment is enough of a punishment for us. So, in other words, God is saying, Ralph, don't think of yourself more high-minded than you are. And he's saying that to us today. It's also saying to guard how you think, yes, but also to be challenged to grow in your faith. Grow in your faith. We just read in the NIV, in accordance with the faith that God has distributed to each of you. Other translations read, a measure of faith, and yet another measure of faith that God has assigned to you. If we look at the word measure out of the King James Version real quick, it means standard or quality or allotment. Standard, quality, or allotment. It means, in this sense, is the basis for determining what is enough or what is not enough. A parallel scripture verse, if you want to write it down, there's some space in the back of your bulletins. Ephesians 4:7. But to each one of us grace has been given as Christ apportioned it. So I want to take a look at that for a moment, and what does this mean? While our faith is unified under a single God, God brings each person exactly what they need to express it. So let's begin this journey of understanding with this simple little fact that I want to talk about in general. Faith is a gift from God. In Ephesians 2:8. Ephesians 2:8. For it is by grace that we have been saved through faith. This is not from ourselves or yourselves. It is the gift of God. So faith is a gift from God. And faith is given initially at the beginning of your journey with Him. It gets us into that right track, that fundamental right track to kickstart us into knowing Jesus, to guide us on that journey. I was blessed to be grow up in a Bible-believing home. It's not perfect, but I'm thankful for the spiritual heritage. So let's just say real quick that over here is the line of where I need to be to know Jesus as my Savior. And so if this is the line of faith, I need to make that decision on my own. I can't slide into home on that day and expect me to get into heaven under the faith of my parents. I can't slide in there and expect to get into heaven under the faith of my wife. I need to express that on my own, that faith. And so once I get to that point, God gives me that faith to say, yes, I want to serve the Lord. Yes, I'm going to bow down my life to the cross. Yes, I'm going to acknowledge Him as my Lord and Savior. And I'm going to take that step out and make that decision. That's the faith that God gives us to make that decision in our lives. And I'm going to try to live that in my life each and every day. Now, after coming to salvation, God gives us, as I mentioned earlier, some additional gifts. And He gives the amount of faith I need to exercise those gifts. So, just a real good illustration. Many of you know my background in sign language. And I believe that when I came to know the Lord as my Savior as a young man, went to a church and they had a sign language interpreter. It wasn't this church, but they had a sign language interpreter. I thought, that is cool. Has anybody ever seen sign language interpreter and say, wow? Yeah, wow, that is cool. So I thought, wow, that is cool. I want to do that someday. And I believe that's the moment that God deposited that gift in me to say, yes, Ralph, you're going to do that one day. And now God protected that in my own life, because it would be from a young person all the way till after I was out of high school before that gift was going to be expressed. So the year after I got out of high school, I took my first sign language class. So all those years, it just stayed in there. God protected that. I believe that for me. God protected that gift, that desire that I had. After I got out of school, an opportunity came because I have 2 deaf cousins in my family. And I said, oh yeah, I remember way back then when I saw that sign language interpreter. I want to learn that. So I went and took my first class. And now I have to let that faith grow, right? That gift has to grow. Okay? It just didn't get deposited in me. I had to learn thousands and thousands and thousands of words in sign language and had to express them. And so I started my journey really way back when I was small, but God began to grow that gift later in life. And as He grew that gift, it just came really easy for me. Now, a lot of you have gifts that come easy for you. They're probably not sign language. I haven't met a lot of people that are really gifted in that, to come easy. A lot of people have to work extra hard at it, in other words. I didn't have to really work extra hard at it. I knew I was wired for that. I was wired for that. A lot of you are wired for certain things that come really easy for you. Some of you went to school and learned the things that you wanted to do. But God is giving you that gift, and He says, I'm going to give you the amount of faith to express that gift that you need. For me to learn sign language, I didn't need a whole lot, I felt, because I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm so excited. But if my mom said, Ralph, I want you to hem your jeans. Oh, yeah? I am not wired for that. Now, based on necessity, I might have to do it because there's necessities that have to be taken care of. And so maybe I can do that. Maybe I can sew a button. But do I want to go into that for my lifetime in ministry? No. I'm not wired for that, but yet you might be wired for that. So each of us have a gift that we're wired for. Some of us have more than one gift that we're wired for. So where do you fit in all of this? That is a good question, right? So if you don't know what your strength is, consider asking a friend, a trusted believer. Don't ask him, do you think I can teach well? Because what is that going to do? That puts him in a bad spot, right? Can I cook well? And now they're going, does this shirt make me look big? Yeah, what do you say? So if you're going to ask a trusted friend, you want to be respectful and say, well, I don't think you teach well, but I think you do this other thing really good. Okay, so if you're that trusted friend, be careful. But if somebody is truthful to you, you want to respect what they're going to say. Okay, don't get angry with them. Don't get bent out of shape. They're being honest. That's why you need a trusted friend. All right? Now, 3 boys are in the schoolyard and bragging about their fathers. The first boy says, my dad scribbles a few words on a piece of paper. He calls it a poem, and they give him $50. The second boy says, that's nothing. My dad scribbles a few words on a piece of paper. He calls it a song, and they give him $100. The third boy says, I got you both beat. My dad scribbles a few words on a piece of paper. He calls it a sermon, and it takes 8 people to collect all the money. Talk about a gift. So one thing we want to be sure that we're all doing is expressing the fruit of the Spirit, don't we? We want to, Paul wrote about it in Galatians, we want to express love and joy and peace. We can all do that. Forbearance and kindness, goodness and faithfulness, gentleness and self-control. All right, well, let's read more. 12, 4 through 5. Refuse to compare. Refuse to compare. Now that the fan turned my pages for me, let's go back here. 4 through 5. Just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not have all the same function. So in Christ, we who are many form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. All right, now Paul really loves this analogy of bodies and members. And he describes and draws attention to in his writings that Christ is the head, and we are the members of the body. That means each of us has a gift given that we can all grow in a balanced, approached way according to the grace that he has given to us. We exercise these. We may not always see the results, but the Lord sees and blesses. There is true diversity in a healthy, growing church. Imagine just with me if we were all thumbs. Everybody hold up their thumbs. Turn to the person next to you and say, you're a thumbuddy. Imagine if we were all thumbs. It's not meant to be, is it? How would we coordinate if we were all thumbs? Well, imagine if we were all feet. Well, we'd have to wear clippers on our nose, I'm sure. But we'd be stepping all over each other if we were all feet. I would just say chaos and confusion will not draw in the unsaved. Will not. What if your toes had eyes? Could you imagine what they would see on a daily basis? If an eye is no good if there is not a head to turn it and a feet to take it places. We need each other, don't we? We need to lock arms and coordinate our efforts. We have seen time and time again some great ministries take place in the church here. When a toe is stubbed, a stomach aches, there's a migraine. When we hurt, we all hurt. We've seen that displayed here, people stepping up. Many memorial services, people stepping up and saying, I'm going to help with that. That is a ministry of helps. Each part of the body will move into action when somebody is hurting and help them out because we are a body. But let's not compare. Let's refuse to do that. And the fourth point is express your gifts. Romans 12, 6 through 8. Let's take a look here. We have different gifts according to the grace given us. If a man's gift is prophesying, let him use it in proportions to his faith. If it is serving, let him serve. If it is teaching, let him teach. If it is encouraging, then let him encourage. If it is contributing to the needs of others, let him give generously. If it is leadership, let him govern diligently. If it is showing mercy, let him do it cheerfully. Now, so Paul mentions here 7 different spiritual gifts. Often they're referred to as motivational gifts. Motivational gifts. And God gives these to build up his church. Now, this list that he has here is not exhaustive. 1 Corinthians and Ephesians 4, in those chapters, there's additional gifts that are mentioned. But we're just going to look at 7 here in a moment. We all have different gifts, and some of us have different measures of the same gift. Think about the teachers downstairs out in the annex, and they rotate on a schedule. A lot of people have that gift of teaching. This verse or passage doesn't mention singing, but I'd like to throw that as another example. Some are gifted enough to sing on national television, while others are content to sing in a church choir. They both have the same gift, but express it differently in different venues in order to meet their God-given desires that they have in their heart to bring honor to Christ. It's the same gift used in different ways. Going back to the teachers downstairs, to teach, some it comes naturally. Some have to roll up their sleeves and dig in a little bit to get to that same comfort level as the other one. They're both valuable. They both have worth. Some are generous to cook and bring food for the potlucks that we have at the church most months, while others are generous to show up early to help at the tables and chairs. Who has the less or more value? Who has the greater impact? Ultimate impact comes when you invest your talents and strengths. So let's do it generously and diligently, cheerfully, and all for the glory of God. Amen? Now, next month, realistically, not next month, but maybe this fall, maybe it will be my turn to cook a delicious, mouth-watering cheesecake. Does that sound good? Can I do it? Jerry's going to be the first one in line to try it. Now, let's just say I put a lot of effort into it and bring it. And then when everybody's done, I say, I'm going to stick around and help clean up. And I noticed in the trash can, there's a lot of pieces of cheesecake. Now, I probably should try something different next time, right? That's being realistic. Now, I get, for trying, a pat on the back. And we all get a pat on the back for trying our gifts. But maybe I should evaluate my gifts sooner than later. But maybe that is the time that I need to. And then another time, maybe I'll go, okay, wasn't really good at cheesecake. I'm going to help in the kitchen this time. And maybe that ends up being a better fit for me. And that's where I'm good at helping. Where are you good at helping? Let's talk about the gift of prophecy just for a moment in 12:6. Prophet. Prophet is the one who gives the prophecy, one who speaks for God, it is defined. It speaks for God and reveals his plans. He or she has the ability to share an appropriate word from the Lord. It can be defined as to bubble forth, to utter. And the prophet speaks in God's name always and by his authority. Now, the Greek meaning for the word prophet or prophecy is the gift of communicating that enforces a revealed truth of God. The prophet is a spokesperson for God and asserts what's on God's mind. There are several examples in the scriptures, and for each gift I'm going to give you some homework that you can go back and take a look at for these different gifts. Jonah is one of them. So Jonah was a prophet, and the Lord sent him to Nineveh to warn of the danger that was about to take place of divine judgment, and that is in the book of Jonah. Now, if you feel that you have the gift of prophecy, great care is recommended, because in Deuteronomy 18, there's a standard set for the office of prophet. 1, a true prophet speaks in the name of Jehovah. That is God. 2, a true prophet will speak the words which Jehovah puts in his mouth. 3, a true prophet will be tested and vindicated by the fulfillment of the message. But lo and behold, if that message does not come to pass, that prophet must be put to death by stoning. Because that's how they put prophets to death. So be careful if you feel that is your office, a prophet. When I was in Bible school, I had lots of great classes. One was on, one of my teachers, I don't remember exactly what class it was. We'd go out for lunch together with the teacher, great man. And he was apparently, in years before, he was out to lunch with a group of his students. And there was another group of people there from another church, another sect, not Christianity. And he approached the students, and the teacher says, "I'm a modern-day prophet." And my teacher spoke up and says, "Well, you know what happens if you say something and it doesn't come true?" And he goes, "No, I don't know." And so my teachers opened it up to Deuteronomy 18 and showed him, a false prophet must be put to death. What happened after that, I don't know. So be careful about if you feel you are called to that office. All right? More time can be spent on each of these, but we don't have that time today. Number 2 is the gift of service. Let's take a look at that. Service or ministry. It depends on your translation. Now, 1 Corinthians 12:18 calls this the ministry of helps. The ministry of helps. And I would just say that is one of the biggest, strongest gifts that our church has, is the gifts of helps. It's interesting to note that, because maybe a lot of you that express that here and are great helpers, maybe you didn't always feel that way. Maybe you felt, man, I can't help nobody. I can't even help myself. But God has developed that through time in your lives, the ability for you to help others. And I'm thankful to God for that. Now, helps is applied to a lot of places in our church. We have toddler care. We have people that spend time keeping up the grounds, taking care of the building. This is all stuff that needs to be done. The gift of helps wasn't always easy for us 5 kids growing up. My mom was proud to say that they had 5 dishwashers. And we weren't electric. But we would do dishes 1 person a night. I suppose it might have been the same night we had to make lunches. I'm not sure. But there is basic necessities that have to take place in your home growing up. Think about your own years that you're raised in your home. There's garbage that has to be taken out. Dishes had to be done and put away. The floor needed to be swept. I best not go tell my mom, "Mom, I don't think I have that gift. I've not been called to do this." Not a good idea. Not a good idea. So I suppose that's why this doesn't say the gift of vacuuming. But it doesn't say the gift of service. There is service that needs to be done. even in the house of God. There are some basic things that we all partake in. There's some basic things. This is where you feel really strong and say, I want to do this for the glory of God. Now, it's interesting to note the Greek word of serving is diakonia, and we get the word deacon from this word, deacon. So a person with this gift readily sees practical needs and goes into action to meet them, to support with joy, often behind the scenes. They don't want nobody to know their behind the scenes work. Phoebe, in Romans 16, 1 through 2, had this gift. If you're missing some of the notes, by the way, I will open my notes to you afterwards if you want to come up and grab a couple things that you wanted to write down. So the meaning behind the word is to serve with a willing, voluntary attitude, no strings attached. It's spirit and power, guided by faith, the right attitude. People want to express this to do whatever they can to bless their church. They take to heart the Great Commission, and they are diligent to carry out that mission in the name of Christ. Paul, in Romans 1:1, calls himself a bond servant, and that is a noun of this word, a bond servant. And Paul referred to himself as a bondservant of Christ. Number 3 is the gift of teaching. A teacher then declares truth and defines it. Chuck Swindoll says of this gift, take teaching away, and the body becomes prey to wolves and false instructors. How much we need our teachers. Teachers instruct, explain, and clarify. Some have this gift in particular for children, teens, or adults. Many of us, if you're grandparents, I'm sure you teach your grandkids at home. That is a gift that you're using to help your grandchild. So thank you for that. Teaching informs and instructs the mind. It imparts knowledge and information. It literally means to goad. G-O-A-D. Everybody say goad. Goad. In Acts 26, Paul is sharing with King Agrippa about his encounter with Jesus. He says he's on the way to Damascus with a companion, and they fell to the ground and heard a voice saying, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? It is hard for you to kick against the goads. The goads. That was a common expression in the Greek and Latin literature. It rose from the practice of farmers goading their oxen. And it would be in the shape of a stick with a pointed end on it. And they would go up and poke and prod the oxen to get him to move. And sometimes the oxen would kick back until they were hurt. It implies that the Lord had been pursuing Saul for some time because he's been kicking against the goad. The goads. So teaching. Number 4, the gift of encouragement. The gift of encouragement. How many of you have received encouragement anytime in your lives? We're thankful to that person that came up, or to God that came up to us and encouraged us. If a teacher tells us what, an encourager may tell us how. To encourage is to exhort, to comfort or come alongside, to console, summon, or invite. If you're struggling with self-worth today, be encouraged by God's presence. Sometimes that's what we have when we don't have it around us. But that's good. The Lord encouraged Joshua during his succession of Moses and said to him, be strong and courageous in Deuteronomy 31. For the encourager, they could fit into the role of protagonist and antagonist, meaning that they sometimes need to goad people. In other words, they say, press on, you can do it. Press to higher ground, become more like Jesus. that person has the gift of urging, of warning, of advising, of counsel, and challenge. And sometimes that's exactly what we need. Encouraging, or the encourager. Number 5, the gift of giving, to impart, bestow, to share. Now, all of us, this doesn't just pertain to financially, but all believers should financially give to the work of the Lord. 10% is a great place to start, but all in all, he expects 100% stewardship. That is the mind, the body, and the will. Remember that from last week? Yet some are uniquely gifted to give. They do so with a huge heaping of generosity, with pure motives. These tend to give. They want no attention, and they do it with joy and integrity. In 2 Corinthians 8, 1 through 5 explains the churches of were filled with the persons of this same gift. Macedonia. Sorry, I lost my spot there. The churches of Macedonia were filled with people that had this gift of giving. Number 6 is the gift of leadership. Leadership means literally to stand before, to preside or rule over. Anybody enjoy speech class in high school? That was not me. Did not like that. I did not have the gift of leadership. At least I didn't think I did at that time. That was not me. Now, the person that stands before rules over, directs, and gives purpose and draws attention to God. Their character needs to be well established, and they possess a humble servant quality. They have the strength of organization, administration, and inspiration. They have a vision and can give direction of how to fulfill that vision. It is characterized by calm, clear thinking, wisdom, and insight. They can motivate others into action. Titus 1:5. This person usually supervises him or herself, but must take great care not to be pulled into a foolish lack of focus. And lastly, it mentions the gift of mercy. Mercy, in some translation, is expressed as showing kindness, helping, doing good to others. This person has the disposition of being compassionate and forbearing, to feel sincere sympathy for those who need grace. And they do it with cheerfulness, not out of sense of duty. They can detect those who are hurting. They're quick to reach out and assist. Persons with this gift have amazing sensitivity. They know when to speak, when not to speak. They know when to go or stay, when to pray, smile, cry, or just be there. God's mercy was displayed in the ministry of Christ when Jesus restored a demon-possessed man in Mark 5. In closing, I got this to read to you. Brother Hammer was appointed to preside over the Master Tool Convention. Brother Screwdriver objected, saying, "Brother Hammer, you're too noisy to preside over this meeting. You're always driving home your point, always nailing people. I call for your immediate resignation." Brother Hammer responded, "Well, what about you, Brother Screwdriver? All you ever do is spin and go in circles." "That may be true," said Brother Screwdriver, "but at least I'm not Brother Plain. He's so surface and shallow. What right does he have even to be here?" Protested Brother Plain, "If you're going to kick me out, what about Brother Ruler? He thinks he's always right, measuring everyone else by his standard." "Well, if you're going to come down on me," argued Brother Ruler, "what about Brother Pliers? He needs to get a grip." "At least I don't rub people the wrong way," said Brother Pliers, staring at Brother Sandpaper. Just then, the master craftsman walked in, and as he used each tool at the perfect time, he created an object of great beauty. So let God use the gifts that he's given to us. Use your gifts to bring ultimate impact to the kingdom of God.